4-year anniversary of the day my life was blown up forever by a bunch of lawyers paid by Jeff Bezos. As Amazon's lawyers stated here in this public filing, on February 20th, 2020, 4 years ago today, they had their first meeting with the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation in Washington, D.C. at 2100 Jameson Avenue in Alexandria, Virginia, to discuss, quote, issues related to Amazon's understanding of defendants' real estate kickback scheme. So they'd decided there was a kickback scheme. They weren't making allegations. They were presenting their facts that 4 years later ended with 4 guilty pleas being vacated in the interest of justice, $7 million seized based on these facts returned, and Amazon's loss of a civil racketeering, fraud, and unjust enrichment lawsuit. So maybe they weren't facts. Maybe they should have said alleged scheme. But there are a few important things here in this disclosure that we should revisit on this anniversary. One, Amazon said that they presented this long document, presentation, a deck. I want to see that deck. You need to see that deck. Whatever Amazon said to the federal government isn't protected by any privilege. We are the government, right? So we should be able to see that document because I want to see what they said. Because I've seen things the government has said based on whatever was said here that are flat out lies. Like Amazon said, my husband steered a deal. To be able to steer a deal, my husband would have to have some decision-making authority at Amazon, which he absolutely didn't. But I've seen it said in a civil forfeiture complaint filed by the government that my husband was a primary decision maker at Amazon. So I'd like to see if that document says that. I'd like to see if this document covers at all what my husband's employment obligations were, which a federal judge said my husband did not violate, even if he did what Amazon said he did. So what did they tell the DOJ here about what my husband's employment duties were? I also just want to revisit the names here. I think it's really telling that when Amazon calls the Department of Justice, they get 5 people to show up to a meeting. When the Olympic gymnasts called the Department of Justice to report their rape, how many people showed up to those meetings? I'm just curious. Did they select their best people to be there? I just have questions about that. And then I also think it's really interesting that IPI's lawyers were there, Chuck Connolly and Amanda Lowe. Amanda is now a federal prosecutor in this office, the Eastern District of Virginia. But setting that aside, if Amazon was accusing my husband of a crime, why was IPI also there? Did IPI disclose to the federal government that they just the night before broken a contract worth $415 million and that if they didn't get the felony charges they were seeking, they were going to be liable for breaching that contract? Because FBI Director Chris Wray once said to Congress that sometimes people with bad financial motivations try to secure criminal charges, and he's right. And then Yusri Omar and Maria Kaur were the Amazon attorneys that showed up. Yusri Omar literally got on a plane from Seattle to Washington, D.C. to go accuse my husband of a crime secretly. And he's the head of Amazon's global ethics and compliance legal practice. And so what I would like to know is that a complicit statement that Jeff Bezos, Andy Jassy, and Amazon's board endorse what Yusri Omar did in accusing my husband of a crime for the DOJ? It's an important question. And Patrick Stokes and Laura McDonald, the 2 Amazon lawyers for Gibson Dunn who tried to shepherd through criminal charges against my husband. And Patrick Stokes, just so you know, did work directly with 2 of the prosecutors listed up here, and I think one of the FBI agents when he worked as a prosecutor for the Eastern District of Virginia and the Department of Justice. So he went and lobbied his former colleagues. And so did Charles Connolly. Charles Connolly was actually the boss of one of the prosecutors still at the DOJ who came to this meeting. And so if you're going to tell me that relationships don't matter, tell me why IPI and Amazon hired former federal prosecutors from the Eastern District of Virginia. Had IPI ever worked with Charles Connolly before? Had Amazon ever worked with Patrick Stokes before? Don't think so. They hired them to go convince their former colleagues to put my husband in prison. There are a lot of questions that we need answers to. And some pretty big things have happened over the past month that I can't share on here, but I've gotten some phone calls from some people that have revealed a lot about threats and coercion and intimidation. People you would have questions you want to ask things to as well. I could be angry on this 4th anniversary of Amazon blowing up my family's life forever. And part of me is, but there's also part of me that knows this much. No one in that room on February 20th, 2020 ever envisioned that the targets of their terror would survive and would be standing here today on February 20th, 2024, with a DOJ investigation ended, with $7 million in seized funds returned, with 4 guilty pleas vacated, having won a federal lawsuit. And what we have proven is that you can stand up to a bully. We've proven to our children that we can do that. And we've proven to the world that the truth really does matter. And I'm really proud of that 4 years later. There's a lot of people who have to answer to a lot of things, and it will happen. But for now, we're here, we're alive, and we're still shining a bright light on all of this.